Hello guys, welcome to my guide containing 4 tips on how to make it through quarantine and stay sane. As the coronavirus pandemic sweeps through the world, a great many of us have found ourselves limited in our freedom of movement for an extended period of time. I should note that despite using the word quarantine in this video, this is meant to envisage all types of limitation of freedom of movement. For example, you might just be staying at home for a majority of time as a precaution while still being able to leave the house whenever you want. Or you might be in self-isolation and prohibited to leave the premises of your home. Or in worst case scenario, you might be locked in a hotel room for strict quarantine for 14 days, unable to leave the room, and possibly somewhere far away from home. Whatever your situation is, we have seen our world shrink a lot in the past months. And having your freedom of movement curbed is a very threatening and a very unpleasant situation. If it continues for a long period of time, it can lead to development of various mental conditions such as anxiety or depression. Not to mention it causes a deterioration of your health and physical condition. A few words about me. My name is Jan. I've been traveling through Southeast Asia since December. My travel plans got derailed mid-March when things got really bad here, and I had to evacuate from the Philippines in 24 hours after they announced a complete lockdown of the entire country. So I caught the first flight out. I made my way back to Thailand and to the island of Koh Tao, where I am currently more or less stuck. Basically, I'm just waiting for the situation to develop, for things to calm down, and see whether I will be able either to continue my travels or to make my way home back to Europe. So I decided to use my free time here to make this video and share with you my 4 suggestions, my 4 tips on how to make your quarantine situation, whatever it may be, how to make it more bearable. These tips are by no means anything revolutionary or new, of course not. Chances are you probably already heard them, but nonetheless, here they are. Tip number 1, routines. You should establish daily and weekly routines which are beneficial for you, which are healthy, and stick to them. According to behavioral psychology research, the human brain is wired into liking routines because it prefers behavior which is familiar, and also routines prevent us from overthinking less important decisions and drowning in detail. Now, for those people who have, even before the pandemic, who have spent most of their time indoors, their lives actually hadn't changed that much. But for the rest of us, whose daily lives mean that we are basically more or less away from home, outside, doing errands, etc., our lives have changed drastically now that we are forced to spend a lot of time inside. So all of a sudden we are stuck with all this time being indoors, and we don't know what to do with it. That is why it is important to try to establish and maintain healthy and beneficial routines as much as possible, because routines prevent us from getting carried away and spending a lot of our time by useless distractions, such as, for example, watching TV for hours and hours on end for an entire day, or browsing social networks endlessly, or looking at Pinterest or Reddit or YouTube for hours on end, etc. Most likely, you already had some routines set up before, and there is no reason to stop doing them while you're in isolation if you can. For example, waking up and going to bed at the same time, or having a morning workout, or having a cup of coffee in the morning, or exercising regularly, or reading and studying on a daily basis, etc. So there is no reason to stop these routines now that you're in isolation. However, those routines which you are unable to do now that you're in isolation, like going out for a run, or going to the gym, or meeting with friends, or going to work, for example, those routines have to be replaced with new ones. For example, instead of going to the gym, perform a 1 hour exercise at home. There are tons of videos on YouTube on basically exercises or workout routines which you can perform in your living room or in your hotel room. Instead of meeting with friends on Wednesday night for a drink, get together in an online meeting and chat with them over the internet. Work is most difficult to replace, mainly because it is a routine which takes a big chunk of your time in any given day, like 8-10 hours, maybe more. If you are for some reason currently unable to do your work, you're suddenly left with a big void of time in your daily life, and it is easy to get confused as to what to do with all this time. I suggest you try to break that big void of time into several smaller, more digestible chunks of time and actions. For example, taking an online course and learning a new skill, or developing new knowledge, or for example, reading, or spending more time with your kids, for example, exercising more, or making art, start writing a diary, whatever. Basically, you split that 8 or 10 hours of time into, like, for example, four chunks of 2 hours, and suddenly that big void gets more manageable, and you're less likely to get carried away in distractions like, I don't know, binge-watching TV or stuff like that. Now, I'm not saying that you should make your entire life one big routine. We humans, we need a combination of routines and novelty, routines and variety. But to a certain extent, routines are useful, especially in a situation like this, when the array of what we can do has become somewhat limited. Last word on routines. This quarantine situation is also an excellent opportunity for you to maybe give up on some bad routines which you might have, some routines which are not healthy, which are not beneficial for you, like adding 3 shots of tequila in your morning coffee, or having hamburgers and fries every day for breakfast, or bitch slapping your partner first thing you do when you wake up in the morning. You know what I mean. Anyway, maintain healthy routines, drop the bad ones, and establish some good new ones. Tip number 2, schedules. Make them and stick to them. This tip is closely connected to tip number 1. Routines are good, but they are far less effective and far less likely to stick if you don't have a schedule in which to perform them. Having a schedule is massively helpful in pertaining to your routines, and make sure you are less likely to give in to distractions or drop the routine. And distractions are always there. They are preying on your attention like a mantis and ready to snap it at a moment's notice. Checking Facebook, checking Instagram, looking at bloopers on YouTube, or even obsessively checking the news. These are all distractions. So in order to prevent giving in to these distractions, it is advisable to design a schedule for the activities and tasks you intend to perform during the day, and then stick to it. For example, if you say, okay, I'm going to read on a certain subject or take a part in an online course from 10 a.m. to 12 a.m., and then do that, and don't give in to distractions during that time. Or you say you're going to exercise from 1 to 2 p.m., that's the time for exercise and nothing else. It is advisable to design your schedule around your natural productivity cycle. So for example, if you are like me, you are most productive in the morning. So it makes sense to wake up early and to perform all the tasks, all the work which demands the most brain power and focus in the morning or until noon, and then reserve the afternoon for other activities such as, for example, an exercise or relaxing or socializing, etc. You might then have a completely different natural productivity cycle, so your schedule might look completely different than this. This is fine. The important thing is to have one and to stick to it. Whether we admit it or not, we are all masters of procrastination, and having routines and having a schedule are 2 very, very effective weapons against procrastination. Tip number 3, be creative. What I mean by this is when you suddenly find yourself with additional free time, you should try to fill it with something which stimulates your mind. It is very easy to give into the temptation of lobotomizing your brain by binge-watching TV series and shows and endlessly scrolling social networks. But let me ask you this. When is the last time you ever felt good and energized after spending 12 straight hours on a couch watching Netflix and checking Instagram? Chances are never. So instead, try to find something which demands more brain power, more focus, which requires some degree of mental effort. For example, study a new subject, improve your knowledge on an existing one, try to make some art, start writing a diary, enter an online course, learn a language, etc. With the internet at your fingertips, the choices are literally endless. Unless you don't have internet. Then you kind of screw it. Tip number 4, communicate. It is very important not to stop communicating with people at this time. I know this sounds like a no-brainer, but let me explain. For example, I was never a big fan of communicating through text and calling people. I always prefer to meet people in person. So I would use texting and calling only to set up a meeting. I would very rarely call someone or text someone just to do small talk and ask how they are, how things are doing, etc. I would much rather speak to them in person and ask them all these things. However, now in these quarantine times, in times of isolation, the possibility of meeting people in person is taken away. So it is easy to fall into the trap of ceasing to communicate, especially if you're a bit introverted like me. I have to actively remind myself to call people, to say hi, to ask how they're doing, to maintain communication and keep in touch with people I care and love. For example, having online meetings like with a group of friends is a great way of doing this. I never thought I would ever get drunk while sitting home alone in front of a computer with my buddies on a screen and chatting through a microphone. But here we are, having a great time despite not being physically present in the same room. So, during quarantine, you have to be proactive in maintaining communication with the people you like, with the people you care about. It helps a lot with your mental condition. Alright, we've reached the end. These are the 4 tips for making it through quarantine and while retaining your sanity. I have not mentioned the very basic ones, like for example, keeping fit by regularly exercising and maintaining a healthy diet and getting enough sleep. But of course, these are the very, very fundamentals for everything we have talked about, and they should absolutely not be ignored. So if we recap, number 1, routines. Establish healthy, beneficial routines and try to stick to them. Number 2, schedules. Design a schedule around your natural productivity cycle and stick to your schedule. Perform routines within the context of your schedule. Number 3, be creative. Find creative and stimulating ways to spend your free time instead of getting carried away by useless distractions such as watching TV or browsing social networks. And number 4, communicate. Keep in touch with people you care about, keep in touch with people you love, and of course do not stop communicating with them. Alright, this is it, guys. Thanks for watching. I hope you found some of this information useful and beneficial. Greetings from Kota, and until next time, take care and stay safe. Bye.